Evening, everyone. Welcome to the weekly armchair kickoff. It's not our usual slot of Wednesday night; it's Thursday night, but it is talk of the league. Our usual co-host Evan is working night shifts tonight, so he's not here. But I'm happy to say I'm joined by my usual partner in crime, Julio. Julio, how are you getting on, my friend?
Yeah, yeah, as good as I can, really. Could be worse, but I'm here, and that's all that matters.
Slowly dying there behind the camera somewhere. Delighted to say I'm also joined by Martin from Mighty Mags. Martin, how are you getting on, my friend?
I'm good, bit. Always happy to jump on. So yeah, for once at least on screen, I'm looking better than Julio. So yeah, I'm happy with that.
Love it,
Enjoy
love
it
it.
while it lasts, mate.
Oh,
Enjoy it
I
while it
know,
lasts.
mate. I know. Yeah, I'll gloat in it.
Absolutely. And also happy to say joined for the first time on Talk of the League by Nathan. Nathan, how are you getting on, buddy?
Yeah, really good, mate. Really good. Nice to get on. Nice to get on.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. It's good to have you on. No, well, few Premier League games on last weekend, but I think the FA Cup certainly was what caught all the headlines last weekend, and we'll touch on that briefly before we move on to our main meeting point there tonight on the subjects. But not so good a weekend for Newcastle, Martin. We are talking about the magic of the FA Cup, especially the way it finished with that Liverpool and United game. But we'll touch quickly on the Newcastle and Man City game. I missed it myself. I was out watching the rugby. I was watching Ireland win a second Six Nations in a row. So I had a few points watching that game. But I'm sure you were stuck into that game. Run us through that City and Newcastle game quickly. Did that rekindle your love in the FA Cup? Or are you just happy that that's over now and you can focus on the league until the end of the season?
Yeah, do you know what it is? I think like that's the fourth time we've played City this season and only bet them once. Um, I suppose if you're look, once we kind of got through the Blackburn game on penalties, every single Newcastle fan in the country went, "We're getting City. We're getting City. Absolutely, we're getting City, or we're getting Liverpool, guaranteed." So obviously, when City came out the hat, you're kind of going, "Yeah, I fucking knew that." Yeah, look, from my perspective, I'm glad it's over. I think, look, we've learned some massive lessons playing on four fronts this season, which, I think I said to yourself and Julio and Evan last time we were on, well, miles ahead of where we should have been last season. We shouldn't have been nowhere near top four. We played above our skins. This year, we've been decimated by injuries to be even more compounded by, I'm sure you've seen yesterday, Botman out for 9 months with a brand new ACL after playing on top of an ACL. Something dreadfully wrong with Newcastle's medical team. I don't really know where to put my finger on it. Obviously Bruno Guimaraes is away on duty with Brazil this weekend against England. He did a press conference today where he says he's never been at a club where he's seen so many injuries. He just doesn't know what's going on. I kind of floated something on Twitter last night. I think Keane pinged me and I went, you know what? It comes to something when Steve Bruce's medical team was better than Eddie Howe's. But that's a reality. We've had players that have been told to play on. Botman overruled the medical team and said he could play and obviously got injured again at Forest. So, getting City in the cup, you're kind of looking at it and going, we know what the result's going to be. We know we're going to get beat. It's just damage limitation. Let's hope it's not 5 or 6. You're praying for Haaland to pull up at training time and looking for miracles, really. Game was okay with some chances, but we just didn't take them. We've been guilty of it all season. But unfortunately, we've been, I think with Nick, in particular with Nick Pope out, he's made a massive difference to that team in that he kind of is your traditional sweeper keeper. He's not afraid to come out and play a ball. Dubravka's not that. He's a good shot stopper. He's not great aerially. And I think what's happened is as that transition of Dubravka coming in and Pope's injury, Newcastle's defense, they've just lost the confidence in the guy behind them. And we've shipped, more goals this second half of the season than we did the entire season last season, from what was, the number 2 defense in the country behind City last season to, pretty much bottom 3, bottom 4. So, yeah, I'm glad it's over. I'd be happy when the entire season's over, to be fair. I think we need a good few players in the summer. I'd be surprised, and I know if there is any Newcastle fans listening, I'd be surprised if we keep hold of Guimaraes. I think they're going to have to sell. I think we're going to have to sell to navigate FFP, unfortunately. A lot of players, a lot of Newcastle fans won't like it, but listen, if somebody comes in and decides abroad they want to pay the clause, somebody like Madrid or Barcelona, I wouldn't want to see him to go anyone in the Premier League, but if we have to sell to move on, like City did, and so on to get around it, then that's what we got to do. I'd be gutted, but if that means it frees up FFP and we could get 5 or 6 players in, like we need 2 centre backs now. We need another striker that could stay fit. Wilson's done. There's a whole heap of stuff we need to do. So I'd be glad when the season's done. We got 10 games. The aim is to try and finish 7th and get some kind of European piece. But look, we'd no luck in any kind of draws this season. I think City in the Cup just kind of verified that. So yeah, I'd be glad when it's over, Jonathan, to be honest.
Yeah, I get that. I think you said it there. You touched on the previous show you were on with us that you mentioned about them kind of a bit ahead of schedule this season. I think no one expected them to get into the Champions League last year, and it was a bit of a curse and a blessing in the same breath. Like you said there, no luck with the draw. It was definitely the group of death that they got in the Champions League. I know a couple of decisions, 50-50 decisions in such a tight group went against them, and ultimately they went out then. But look, I mean, what would the extra games have done for them? It would have hampered them even further, probably. And you mentioned injuries there. I mean, I've never seen anything like the injuries at United as well. Man United this season as well. I think it's probably the COVID season's catching up with clubs. The incessant amount of games last year and a lot of different factors. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out next year. But just touch on the FA Cup there on Sunday. Then Nathan, that unbelievable game between Liverpool and Manchester United at Old Trafford. Not many fans of any club, even United fans, were optimistic going into Sunday's game. Ultimately, it turned out to be a cracker. I've seen the side of United that I haven't seen all season. There was heart there. There was bottle. What did you make of it yourself?
I mean, it's the first time I've been working at the weekend and actually managed to watch the entire game uninterrupted. So it was absolutely beautiful. It really was just that sort of game where you think, right, yeah, we're against Liverpool. It's Klopp's season. We're expecting to be smashed here, and it was just like you say, it was just a different side that we didn't expect. I think the occasion really helped. The atmosphere in the stadium was, you could hear it through the telly. It was just ridiculous, like the best we've probably heard it for a little while. Yeah, it was just that old cliche of the magic of the FA Cup. It was exactly that. From a neutral point of view, what a game of football, and to win it in the depths of extra time was just absolutely perfect. We got to see some real personality in the players, and it was probably the first time I've seen Ten Hag actually beat another manager tactically quite convincingly. When Liverpool went 2-1 up and they started taking players off the pitch, and you thought, okay, you seem to think you've got this in the bag. And then it was the changes that Liverpool were making tactically just really let them down. In the 120th minute of extra time, chucking everyone up for a corner, and could have taken it to penalties but didn't. That's what let them down, and that's what created that breakaway goal for Garnacho and Ahmad to get away. And that's what let them down. That's what the tactic was for them to win it, and they've gone and lost it instead. But yeah, it was just an unbelievable game. Really good to see some real personality from the player that we've been really missing, and to see Ahmad put in a shift and get a winning goal. Absolutely perfect for me.
Yeah, it had that real cup vibe, didn't it? I mean, there was no one playing for a draw. I mean, both sets of teams, both managers just seemed to be going all out in the end. It didn't look like either team wanted penalties, which was unusual. Like you said there, in the 120th minute, Liverpool leaving one man back, they were literally going all out for that goal from the corner, and it spectacularly backfired. Julio, what was your thoughts on Sunday? Did it rekindle that love for the FA Cup that had been there for so many years, or was it just another game for you?
The annoying thing was, like, half of the game I missed, especially in normal time, because I had an important work meeting that I couldn't get out of. But luckily enough, I was able to tune in when all the goals were, especially in extra time. So it's quite convenient that every time I was able to tune back in, Anthony was about to pull off a miracle with his right foot, and all sorts. But I think what we're losing in today's game is a lot of freedom in play. All this bollocks, excuse my French, but all this bollocks about patterns of play and how everything needs to be this robotic style of play and whatever. Pretty much anything that was used to beat Ollie with when he was in charge. that wasn't there at the weekend. It was a very, very brave performance from United, and it was just a good game of football to watch, to be honest. And to see two teams go at it, and Liverpool did what they do best, which is take the lead and then try and see out the game the same way they always do. And then it was interesting to see what happened to Liverpool after, because Liverpool were making changes that let them down, and I think that goes down to Klopp's stupid decision to play a well-strength team earlier in the week in the Europa League, when they pretty much had the tie done and dusted from the first leg. And those changes that were being made obviously didn't help, especially with the energy levels going into extra time. But I think the other thing is Liverpool seemed to lose. It looked like they'd lost belief a little bit in themselves. It was very un-Liverpool-like. Do you know what I mean? Especially when Rashford brought it back to 3-3. It looked at that point where Liverpool were maybe more hoping that they could get a winner instead of believing, which is very unlike this Klopp team that we've seen. And the one thing I wonder is how will this affect them in their run into the end of the season? Because pretty much all season they haven't been playing that well, but they've been running off fumes. They've been running off these vibes, whatever you want to call it, mixed in with this Klopp like farewell wankfest tour, whatever you want to call it. Where everything's about Klopp is like, and you got certain people saying, "I want Klopp to win the league for Liverpool." Like, no one wants Liverpool to win the league, and it was just, I think we all loved it as United fans, watching the freedom of play and how there was that kitchen sink formation, where we only had two defenders on the pitch at one point, one of which was Harry Maguire making runs in behind, like a prime number 9 almost. But just watching the game, it was just overall a really good game of football. And I've been calling for Ahmad to get a proper chance for a few months, not because of what happened at the weekend, but in football, you get different kinds of, obviously, players. You get some that just can come in and hit the ground running straight away. But players like Ahmad, I think, are players who need a few games, not these 10, 15-minute cameos every other week, proper like 20 minutes one game and then starting the next, and then, proper minutes over a few games to marinate in this team. And then you'll see it come to fruition. Ahmad didn't have a good loan at Rangers. He barely played. It was similar then as it is at United. And then when he went to Sunderland, he played consistently every game. And he was doing bits in the Championship, which for a player like Ahmad, who's quite low gravity and maybe not physically like that built, do you know what I mean? I know he's got a bit of timber on him now since being back at United, but he was quite lightweight when he first came in. And to go into the Championship and do that well says a lot, because it's quite a difficult division to do well in. So I just think that obviously he got a red card, so he'll be banned a little bit. But do you know what I mean? I think the only person that's upset about that is, apart from himself, maybe everyone, with the fact that why did the referee give the second yellow then? To answer the question on screen, I can't think of a better one. I can only think of bad ones, to be honest. Scoring the winner in the FA Cup against the Scousers to screw up this quadruple bid in Klopp's farewell season, and getting sent off as a result of it's quite a storyline. But at the end of the day, I just think that it was such a good game of football to watch. It was exciting, and I'm not saying I want 4-3 the 4-3 games every week, like let's outscore the opponent, because to be honest, I just think I'll die of a heart attack before the end of the season. But with the belief with the team, and it looked very much like they weren't downing tools this season. It looks very much like, sure, they've been down in obviously emotion because there's been quite a poor season by some of the player standards, but it looks very much like they're still behind him and they still want to do well. So you can hope that maybe they can take this forward and maybe finish the season strongly. I know we've been saying this pretty much every game this season, like maybe this can kickstart our season, and we're halfway through March and we're still saying it. But to be honest, I just hope that I hope Chelsea do like the funniest thing and just knock out City and then lose to us in the final, and then we get an FA Cup. I don't know what's going to happen with Champions League football because there's still a way to go. I hope there's a way where everyone around us bottle it and then we get it. And then second to last game of the season against Arsenal, we don't beat them because I think they're the lesser of the three evils. But I just hope that this just really takes the players forward to the end of the season and really motivates them that there's still something in this season.
Yeah, definitely hit the nail on the head there. It was a good open game of football, and it will be really interesting to see what it does to each team's respective remainders of the season. I mean, will it really give the Liverpool squad a sucker punch, or will it just continue seamlessly next week? And will it kickstart United's season, or is it just another flash in the pan? And when we play Brentford, then it's like looking at when we played them last season and lost 4-0. Look, it's just been one of those seasons. It's been a strange season throughout the league. I think it's been one of the worst Liverpool teams I've seen challenging for a Premier League title. But look, that's a discussion for their day. A lot of positives came out with Sunday, but also off the pitch, a lot of headlines about tragedy chanting that was going on. We see this a lot that goes on in English football, but particularly it's highlighted when Liverpool and United play each other. Two clubs that have had awful human tragedies happen off the pitch. Liverpool, of course, with Hillsborough, Manchester United with Munich. So two clubs that share a lot off the pitch. There's a lot of respect off the pitch as well between fans, regardless of what they may think on match days. I'm not shy about giving my opinion about Liverpool players, but ultimately there's a respect there. There's a line I definitely wouldn't cross. Martin, where do you stand on this tragedy chatting? Because it's a footballing problem. It's a systematic of football fans at the minute. It's not exclusive to Liverpool and Manchester United, but it's just when you see grown men standing making airplane motions, or on Sunday I saw a United fan stood making Hillsborough actions to Liverpool fans. Where do you stand on this? Is there a way we can stop this in a footballing sense, or is it much bigger? Is it a societal problem, do you think, in English football?
Do you know what? I think it's always been there. I think probably the problem now, and I don't know what the other lads think, but the problem is now you're more likely to get caught because there's more cameras, there's more TV, there's more footage. Like, when I was a lad, the chants were, it probably wasn't as bad. Obviously, the roughest we get is Newcastle versus Sunderland or Newcastle versus Borough, but not to that level. But I think, from every football fan, certainly from a Newcastle level, like, we would be very respectful of Liverpool, of the 96, because at the end of the day, these were people that went to a game and never ever made it home. And at the end of the day, no matter what your club rivalry may be, we're all just fans at the end of the day. So for me, for adults, kids, men, women, children, to go to a game wanting to support that team in the best way they can for 90 minutes and not come home from that is something that we should all never, ever forget. So I think for any fan to mock it, to chant, be it Munich, be it Heysel, be it whatever it is, it's actually it's not fucking on, end of. And that's coming from a Newcastle fan. I think the TV coverage and everything else is there, but certainly if we're talking about the gentleman that I seen that was all over Twitter that was doing the kind of face to a cage demographic piece, there needs to be serious action with that. Now, I think what people also forget in the modern age of social media is, like, this can cost you a job nowadays. You put something on Twitter, you do something, you get yourself viral, like that it doesn't just end with you making yourself look like an outright dick, which he did, but that can destroy your family. It can destroy your job. It comes down on you like a sack of bricks that, for 30 seconds. What causes it? I'd say the guy was probably pissed up. So, there's an argument to say, do you not serve drink around it? Do you not? It's the same. And I was only talking to a lad about this the other day in work, and I said, it's a similar thing now, not take away the whole chanting piece, but some of the behaviors and the erratic behaviors from people, some of it is drink driven. And I said to him, it's the same on aircrafts. Like, I was on an aircraft there coming back from Rome a couple of weeks back. I was out there for a few days and I came back. There was a guy in front of me in the seat, and he was openly drinking out of a bottle of rum from the time we took off from Italy to the time we landed back in Dublin. And he was bazooka drunk. And the girl stewardess tried to stop it twice, and he just started getting abusive. He's getting rowdy. He was embarrassing the girlfriend. The woman beside him moved seats. Like, you know, at some point, you're going to have to look at things and go, okay, what's the main root factors here? You know, and if it's drink and stuff like that, listen, if you had to cut drink, I know I would go to a game, I like a beer. But if that was the difference between there being what we're seeing currently and some of the behaviours and just going and watching your match for 90 minutes, then I'll happily do without a pint. But I think the disrespect from some, luckily it's a minority, but the unfortunate thing in particular, as you said, you know, a United fan, he tars all of your fans with the same brush, unfortunately. And that's all that's seen. And what was as a neutral, you know, at the weekend for the United Liverpool game, it was what you want the FA Cup to be. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jonathan. It was exactly what you want. Thrilling, end-to-end goals. I'm pretty much the same as Nathan and Julio. You know, I don't want to see Klopp on this farewell tour. I actually dislike the guy immensely. You know, I can't wait to see the back of him out the Premier League. But you know, it's everything you want. And I think the unfortunate thing after that, you know, as Julio said, will it kick United's season on? Will it be, you know, repeat and rinse against Brentford in a week's time? Maybe, who's to know? But listen, I think there's, as you said, a lot of clubs are stuttering, and you know, they're a win here and then a loss here. But I just think, you know, you had such a cracking game, which for me is the best of the Premier League and football as a whole. And then you had that at the back end of it. And the unfortunate thing is, part of that footage and everything else, that's the only thing that day is going to be remembered for, some of that stuff. And I think it's a shame to the genuine fans that go, have a beer, enjoy themselves, have the crack and have the banter. Listen, we go down to Anfield, we go down to Old Trafford, and, you know, you lads are still singing about Shearer fucking 20 years on, but we have the banter back. That's what it's about. But there's, as you said, there's a level you just don't cross. You know, and even as Newcastle fans, I would say, I can speak for a majority, we would never go to Anfield or Old Trafford or somewhere like that and do that kind of shit, because you just don't. End of.
Yeah, but I think you hit the nail on the head there at the start of that point when you said ultimately we're all fans, and even something like Hillsborough. I remember watching a documentary about it there about 10 or 15 years ago, and it was very emotional, and that's coming from a staunch Man United fan. I remember sitting with my girlfriend at the time, she was watching it with me, and I said to her, if I wasn't a football fan and if I didn't have a club now, I would follow Liverpool Football Club from this moment, because there's something very poignant about it, and you can see how it rallies fans, similar to what Munich did back in '58 as well. A lot of people started following Manchester United after that, my own grandfather included. So they're historical tragedies, but in many ways they kind of unify a club, and they can unify a fan base. But like
I think there are also points in history that you remember as well.
Absolutely.
You remember the good, but you do remember the bad. Like, I remember where I was when Heysel happened. I remember watching it unfold on the TV and all of that stuff, you know, the fire at Bradford City. All of these things that you'll remember at some point, kind of flashbacks as to where you were. But look, there's just, like I say, there's just levels that you just don't cross. And unfortunately, there's certain fans that do it, and they make themselves world famous. But, you know, what happens now, like I say, because of that coverage, is their world comes crashing down. And I have no doubt that he's being dealt with, or I'm sure police are involved and other things, and it'll get to his work and his family and everything else. And he'll look back at it in, you know, however long time, and he'll go, what a dick. But absolutely, you know, 30 seconds of fame can destroy it. But each to their own. It's just a shame, as I say, it tars a club and its fans all in one, because it's not, certainly from my experience of, you know, knowing you guys and others from different clubs, it's not what real fans are about. So shameful, really.
Definitely not. Nathan, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's as simple as something as maybe stopping the serving of alcohol at games, or is this problem a little bit more systematic? Do you agree with Martin that it was kind of always there? It's just a little bit more easily broadcasted these days with social media and kind of heightened exposure?
I mean, it's a case of if you're a fan in a football stadium and you see somebody doing it, your best bet is to start recording and posting it on social media to get people like that out of football stadiums and out of... You know, you're taking a ticket away from someone that genuinely wants to be there and enjoy the moment. Yeah. And like we said, we hope that he's going to get the book thrown at him, never be allowed in the football stadium again. And I think it also comes back partly down to lack of knowledge is fucking dangerous. And, you know, you've got Man City fans in, you know, making Munich gestures that they just don't understand what they're gesturing about. You know, they have no idea that few of their players and staff were on that plane as well. They just have no idea.
Lack of education, Nathan, in some places.
Lack of education and a generational thing. You know, you've got teenagers and young kids that have learned about these things, and they just take it into the wrong perspective and take it into a way of, you know, taunting other fans rather than understanding what actually happened and actually meant. So yeah, I don't think, you know, you're never going to be able to fully remove alcohol from the football stadium because it's such a $1 million business for all football grounds across the country. So, but you know, limits, and you know, if you get to a turnstile and a security guard sees you off your face, you just don't let him in. You know, it doesn't. You don't give a shit about 2 or 3 people not being in a football stadium. It's not going to make that much of a difference if they're not going to produce these sort of ridiculous and childish chants in order to create some sort of what they consider banter, which is actually fucking disgusting. You know, these people had families, these people had lives, and it's just not on at all. You know, there was Liverpool fans on the game on Sunday that would chant Munich, and there was United fans, unfortunately, making gestures about Hillsborough, and it's just not on. You know, these things do not belong in a football stadium. These things happen to people, and yeah, it's difficult to be able to try and eradicate it because there's always some idiot who thinks it's funny. It's not funny. It's gross. It's disgusting. And it's just not on at all. It's not right for what, you know, it's like 50 odd years later and people are still going to do it. It's just, until you eradicate every single one of them, it's never going to change. That's what's unfortunate about it. This lack of knowledge, this lack of understanding of what actually happened. People consider it as banter, but it's just not.
Yeah. Julio, do you think there's a way we can completely eradicate this from English football? Do you think maybe it should go so far as the clubs themselves actually getting punished now, and even if it isn't all the fan bases, that there's just extra pressure on the clubs themselves to deal with this internally by maybe dishing out points deductions? What way do you think is the best way forward for that one, Julio?
I think I find it difficult to agree with people saying points deductions for the club because I feel like that's unfair on the football club initially, because some idiots decide like that they want to be just stupid about things. Look, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's just because we've got more cameras, but it feels like the minority ruining it for the majority. I think is becoming more and more frequent since the pandemic finished, as such, in terms of when everything opened up and fans were allowed back in stadiums. I think when you look at certain incidents like UEFA in the Euros final, the way that was handled with Wembley, for example, you know, I won't put, you know, that was a whole different thing. But I just think this kind of tragedy chanting is happening a lot more frequently, and it's getting to the point where it's beyond disgraceful. Like, I feel bad for the majority who are at games who do feel like unsettled by these certain idiots who decide it's hilarious to start taking the mick out of people dying in a plane crash, or like Hillsborough, or any other horrible incident that happened in football. You know, at the end of the day, we're all fans. None of us would wish that kind of thing on any other fan, no matter how bad they're being to us on the day. I think obviously the big problem is education. You know, some idiots can't be helped, really. When you look at how bad certain people have been, especially since the pandemic, in all walks of life, to be honest. You know, I see certain people behave in certain ways just in public, and I'm like, these kind of people weren't visible before the pandemic. Like, what really happened in that 18 months or however long it was that we were all locked inside? But I just think that more action needs to be taken. And I think they really need to stamp the authority. I think there needs to be FA getting involved. If there's a football regulator coming in, if there's something that they can do about it, fair enough. But the clubs as well, there needs to be severe punishment. I'm talking fines, I'm talking bans, I'm talking maybe even jail time. Something really severe, like we're seeing with the FFP points deduction. I know it's obviously FFP is a different thing, but you're seeing the way that that authority is being stamped into an extent where everyone's thinking, damn, like everyone's going to start like losing points now for overspending. Like, and we'll obviously come to FFP a bit later, but you're seeing everyone's like, oh damn, now it looks like everyone needs to buy, like needs to sell to buy. And when that kind of authority comes down, I think the authority needs to be stamped with this kind of behavior, because honestly, right, the game at the weekend was almost the perfect game of football, from the fans bantering each other the way they did, you know, in certain chants and stuff, not tragedy chanting. The game, the way it had panned out and everything, the atmosphere, everything about it was a proper Super Sunday battle of gods almost between two giant football clubs, and everything about it was perfect until some idiots decided they thought it was hilarious to go on the piss and start, you know, just behaving in that certain way, you know, because you know what they say sometimes about alcohol being like a truth serum to people. Do you know what I mean? I've been guilty of that. I'm sure all of you gentlemen have at some point in your life. You know, I'm sure some of you have called out people you didn't like when you wish you hadn't. But at the end of the day, this really needs to be, this can't go unpunished. You know, I think employment, literally any way that can really start, because we're in a position now where people don't want to lose their jobs because of like cost of living, for example. And if your shit behavior on a weekend at the football that you think is hilarious, if that's causing you to lose out on money and stuff, and then in a year's time, the Sun will run an article where you go, I lost my job from tragedy chanting and now I'm homeless or on benefits or whatever. That's kind of on you in that aspect, right? I'm not mocking people on benefits or anything. I'm just saying that kind of chain comes from stamping an authority, and then people will see, oh, damn, this is actually serious. We should stop doing this. There are some idiots that you have to send out the class. Do you know what I mean? But those idiots don't make anything of themselves. So really just don't let them back in the classroom, if you catch my drift. So
Point.
At the end of the day, it just can't go unpunished now. I think there needs to be punishment from three different like perspectives. I'm not doing that. I'm not even talking about Scousers being unemployed.
It's a touchy subject.
I think the only realistic like ban you could issue, or the only sort of like thing you could put in place, is if you've got a supporter in your midst that's been caught tragically chanting and has been reported to the police and has been investigated, that club will lose their allocation for any next away game. So that next away game they've got, you'll lose 2,000 or 3,000 people supporting your club. And if you end up going on to lose that game 1-0 because you haven't got your supporters there cheering you on, that's realistic, because that sort of thing will then start. You'll then get supporters in that midst reporting them more often. That these people go under the radar a bit too easily now, until they're posted on social media after the game. If you've got these things happening around you in football stadiums, and I hope that people do, any sort of like racism or tragedy channel, anything like that needs to be reported. And education is so important in those things. Not just the fact of people getting arrested; they should be getting arrested, but it's also a case of educating these people that are being arrested, not just a case of throwing the book at them. Yes, but they need to know why they're having the book thrown at them. But yeah, that sort of thing. Like if you've got a supporter that's been reported and it's been investigated, that then club loses their away allocation. You'll miss out 3,000 fans.
Thing is,
Sorry, I think there's definitely an argument for clubs to be fined, I think.
Yeah, financial as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Go on, Julio. Sorry, mate.
No worries. I've just seen a comment that comes in. Martin, you make a great point with that, though, as well. I do think if the club gets fined, I wouldn't be against that. I just think points deductions is a bit over the top, you know, because of obviously a club could have won at the weekend, you know what I mean? And then to see, like, this could be a relegation battle for all we know. And then a team loses on points because some idiot in the crowd decided to start, you know, chatting shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there are fines there for the likes of pitch invasions and crowd trouble and stuff like that. So why don't they just widen that and just say, look, any kind of, you know, unruly kind of chanting or whatever else, you know, be it, and you know, the whole chanting thing. We're not just talking about, you know, tragedy here. We're talking about racism as well. You know, people that are
100%.
That are abusing players and everything else. Like at some level, there has to be there has to be a financial impediment to clubs that are not dealing with them. I actually really like Nathan's point as well about, the individuals need to be educated and stuff. People that are picked up out of that, let's take this guy as an example. He should be put on some kind of community service program for a period of time where he's got to work with certain communities or certain groups or areas around tragedy or bereavement and stuff like that. Because I tell you, that would soon sort you out.
Yeah, that's
and give you that education.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah,
The other thing as well is just like, obviously, if you ban someone and then you put them on some kind of education course about all this kind of thing, the problem is a lot of courses nowadays are very easy to pass. A lot of them are very much like, oh, I can just tell them what they want to hear and I'll get through it. It's fine. I'll do my community service or whatever, and that's it. But they really need to make it very difficult for people to actually pass it, because that way you get these people actually being educated, and it has to be very like in their face about it, because people just don't care. And even after they go through this course or whatever, they still won't care after.
Yeah, but I think the way around that, though, Julio, is longevity, which is a long enough time to serve. So maybe if that if this lad from the weekend is dealt with, then maybe that course isn't necessarily a course where you got to do that, but maybe that serving the time on a community service program is like 16 months. Because they can't get out of it at that stage. So if you are I'm trying to think of a situation, alcoholic, or you're in AA, or you're drug rehab or whatever, you can't just go in and tick a box and say, well, I'm okay now. Like, you serve time to get past your problem, for want of a better word, or your addiction or your habit. So I think that it needs to be that not that it needs to be a deterrent, but I think that learning and education needs to be of a lengthy enough time that they serve the time to understand.
I think even a pre-education system that exists between clubs. I mean, rather than waiting for fans to make these mistakes and punishing them afterwards, make it a prerequisite for season ticket holders at the likes of Liverpool, Man United, City, Newcastle, whoever it may be, that they go through education courses. One of the requirements of getting a season ticket is that you're aware of their rivals, you're aware of the tragedies that they've suffered, have first-hand testimonials from surviving family members, which obviously would be a lot easier for Hillsborough than it would be Munich. But I mean, as we've all agreed here, they're human tragedies, and we need to humanize this problem. These idiots are standing at a game and they're mocking just a tragedy in name, but they're not actually realizing that the family members are watching on the telly. That they're thinking back to their son or daughter who was crushed that day at Hillsborough.
There's other kids and generations that are still involved in this. It doesn't go away.
Exactly, and it needs to be humanized. I think that's the biggest thing here. And look, I mean, we could talk about this till the cows come home, but look, I think we can all agree that there needs to be a massive, serious crackdown from the FA. And it probably brings us nicely onto our next point, because the FA and the Premier League especially have proved that they can wield the axe when they really need to. Now there's breaches of this new profit and sustainability rules every second week now. Leicester City have been charged today with breaking profitability and sustainability rules. Nottingham Forest were charged earlier on the week. Martin, you touched on it already, that Newcastle up against FFP issues now this summer, despite the fact that they're probably one of the wealthiest football clubs in world football now at the minute. I mean, Chelsea look like they're going to be facing a points deduction the next 18 months because they have to sell £200 million worth of players by June or something this year. I mean, look, we all agree that we need to have some sort of leash on the spending. We can't just have the super rich clubs spending what they want. That we can't have clubs spending money that they don't have and put themselves into financial ruin. Do you think, Martin, that the rules are a little bit just too stringent at the moment? Do you think there needs to be a little loosening of the leash at the minute, or do you think it's just a case of clubs adapting to these rules over time?
Honest opinion, lads, I don't think the rules for FFP are worth the paper they're written on. I don't think they work. And I'm not saying that because, all of a sudden we've got the wealthiest owners in the world, I think I said this last time. The issue for me is the rules keep changing. So as a Newcastle fan, we did 14 years of Mike Ashley. He brought the club to a standstill. We never spent. He took money from inside the club. He took money off the jerseys. He took name and rights. He took all this other stuff. Then all of a sudden we got this takeover. We got, PIF, wealthiest owners in the world, and we can't spend a penny. And all of a sudden the rules change. So, the difficulty that we have as fans is, okay, yes, you shouldn't just be able to go splash the cash willy-nilly. And, we never expected when we got these guys in that we were going to go and all of a sudden we were going to go from buying, Hendrick and players like these, John Joe Shelby's of the world, and it was going to be Neymar, Mbappe, and all these other players. Like, that's just nonsense. It all goes through stages. So I get the FFP piece. A couple of the issues I have with it is they're very, very quick to come at Everton and come at Forest and come at Leicester, and it's done, dusted, fines, deductions, points. Chelsea have had no action. They're still supposedly investigating Abramovich. Man City are still not being dealt with. It's taken a long time and it's very complex and everything else. As an outside fan looking in at that, and listen, we're affected by FFP, we may have to sell and all this other stuff. It is what it is until there's a regulator and financial independence and all this other stuff. My issue is the clubs are not being dealt with fairly and squarely. It's disproportionate to some of the clubs. It's disproportionate to how the fines are being put out and the points deductions. And it just, this whole FFP thing for me smacks of, no disrespect to you lads sitting here as Man United fans, but it smacks of the whole top six being protected still and being allowed, despite being in some clubs some severe debt, being allowed to spend and continue to challenge season after season after season. So the issue for me is clubs that have broken these things, and I Jonathan, I said this last time I was on, I have an issue. I could look at it and say, well, how are Man United allowed to spend and do what they do, but yet they neck up their ass in debt and leverage debt and all this other stuff? And the same for Arsenal, the same for Spurs, over $1 billion on the stadium. How are they allowed to spend, but yet Newcastle have got the wealthiest owners? We're not allowed. Why is that? So is it because of the rules, or is it because it's being navigated in a way that the competition is being stifled, in that they don't want another Man City, that the 5 or 6 that are there don't want another shark in the pond? And that's my issue. So I feel for Forest. I feel for Everton. I think the good thing that's come out of this, and in fairness, I would say to both clubs in particular, Forest, and Leicester today, the statements that have gone out from Forest and Leicester are scathing. And it's going to open up a can of worms in my book at some point. And I feel we're only a matter of fines or a club in some way where they will look at it and go, right, we're going to take this and we're going to take a legal action because it's anti-competitive. So that's why Newcastle fans get up in arm. And I know, we're picking up things there saying Man United have the biggest turnover. That's fine. Let Newcastle spend money, and in 2 years' time, we'll have the highest turnover. But you won't let us. So you can't have it always. You can't have it closed off and say, listen, Julio's point, 2 massive clubs with history in Man United and Liverpool. You are, because you've had that history for a period of time. Newcastle can have that because we've now got the means to eclipse all of you. Every single club in that league, we can eclipse instantly if we were allowed to play the game. But we're not being allowed to. And the rules keep getting changed and manoeuvred week after week by the Premier League. Well, clubs are meeting. What are we going to do? We're going to have a meeting. What's this about? Well, it's about fair and transparent business calls. So you can have a sponsor, but it's got to be market value. It wasn't market value when City got theirs. Was it market value when Man United got Adidas? Who's to know? But it was never checked. All of a sudden, there's more money coming into the game. Oh, we're going to put this rule in. Newcastle, you can't have that because it's not market value. Lads, it's not fair. It's anti-competitive. At some point, there's a legal challenge coming. I don't think it'll be Newcastle, by the way, that will challenge it. And I said this last time. The reason for that is because of the owners we've got and the stringency that we went through with the takeover, we're being watched more than any other club in that league by the Premier League. And I make no bones about that. That's exactly what's happening. But it'll be somebody like a Forest, or it'll be somebody like a Blackburn if they come up, or a Leeds, or somebody gets done and they'll take a case and they'll win it. So I just want the consistency. I want to see the bigger clubs dealt with. Like, I look at Chelsea, and part of the whole piece of the government taking part of the funding and Abramovich going was he was meant to hand off 2 billion or whatever to charities. Does anybody know that been done? I never heard nothing about it. So for me, it's where's the fairness? So if we want the Premier League to be the best league in the world, we want to have the best players, we want to have the best business out there, that it's the best game in the world, you got to spend. So I have a dead easy solution. Let the club spend up to the highest turnover at the club at the top. So at the minute, if that's City or if that's United, let the club spend up to the amount that they make on their turnover, if they can. And if you can't, you can't. If you're not a club that's making that turnover or has that money, that's life. I'd love to have a nice flash car, but I don't have a huge job that I can buy one. So I drive what I drive. You've got to stay within your means, but you should be allowed to compete. Rant over.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do agree with you, Martin, in terms of that top six argument. I think I mentioned it the last time you're on the show with us, was the whole Super League breakaway. I still think to this day that it was a travesty that those clubs weren't handed points deductions and massive fines. They were handed fines, but I don't think they were ever charged to the full extent of those fines.
If you look at the rule changes, Jonathan, that again, as fans outside of it, and I'm not just saying Newcastle, I'm talking about like lads I know that are Everton supporters, Norwich supporters, other teams that have been in that league and been relegated. Everybody looks at it, and you're looking at the league and you're going, well, we're never ever going to be given a chance to win something because we're not being allowed to compete. Mm-hmm. It's a closed shop. And, all jokes aside, like when I look at it, I kind of sit down and go, like, the Premier League are killing their own game. They're killing football as we know it. Because you want the competition. You want another Leicester. You want somebody to come out as a rank outsider and win the league. The year Leicester won that league, it was fucking brilliant.
Unbelievable.
Because it was just great to witness. But all of a sudden then that's kind of happened, and that few at the top. And I'm not necessarily saying Man United, because I know, there's others, Liverpool and the likes of Spurs in particular. They've closed that off and they've gone, oh, hang on a minute now. You have an house seat. Screw, we don't want that happening again. So change the rules. You get around it a little bit and challenge FFP and PRS and all this other stuff to change the rules again. And to change the rules again and again and again. It doesn't work, lads. Killing the game. Let teams spend that have it.
Yeah, it's a good point, because we touched on this a few weeks ago, me, Nathan and Julio, about the lack of competition and the state of that January transfer window and the difference in spend this January compared to last January. Nathan, what do you think of this whole FFP issue? Do you think the Premier League is killing itself here slowly? Are we going to slowly fall behind La Liga again in terms of that competition appeal? If we're just shooting ourselves in the foot here and we're not allowing the clubs that can spend to spend?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an element of, if you've got teams that want to spend money, just let them spend it. As long as they, like Martin says, as long as they can and they're not overspending into their means. And he makes a great point. The Glazers were able to take £1 billion out of the club and load it back into debt. And it's like, and we've still been able to spend. It doesn't make much sense in that sense. I know Reece was saying that, we get our means around spending because of our highest turnover, but that's not. Obviously these rules are just stabbing the Premier League in the back themselves. They really are killing their own league. If you want the best product in the world, you let the team spend it how they want to spend it, and they're going to bring in the best players that they want to spend it on. And it's like, like you say, La Liga is just such a dull league to watch now, because they haven't been able to create that product that we have, and it's getting to the point now we're turning into a product that nobody's going to want to watch, because none of the teams, they're all relying on these homegrown talents and trying to make the next best player in the world from their own academies. It doesn't always work like that. Or sometimes it works out that you buy a player and he turns out to be the best player in the world. you know, it's just you've got to let these teams spend what they can, and if they can't spend it, they don't spend it. And then if they start, then you start going down the route of if they spend it and then they're in debt, then you start prosecuting or charging in that respect. You've spent too much on this player, you're now in the red. You're going to get a fine in that respect or a points deduction in that respect. You don't just not allow players, not allow teams to spend because you don't want it's and the fact that the money doesn't get passed down into grassroots football, that seems to have gone its way a little bit. You know, there was a meeting this week or last week about from the EFL saying that the Premier League have got all the money and it's not being passed down. You can understand that. Hang on. Yeah, cooking books. Yeah, definitely. It is just a case of if the teams have got money to spend, just let them spend it. And then if they start going into the debt, then you start going down the route of profit and sustainability and all that rubbish. Yeah. At the end of the day, if you want the best product in the world, you've got to spend money. And that's what it always comes down to.
Yeah. I think there is an easy way to control some of the money, which is salary caps.
Well, yeah.
Because then that puts every team on a level playing field. So you can buy a player if you've got the money, but if the salary cap, similar to what they do with American football, you've got rich teams, you've got poorer teams in the NFL, and you can buy players and you can trade players, but there's a salary cap. So at least it puts everybody on the same playing field. So you might be able to buy 5 more players, but you can't necessarily buy the best players because you've got to abide by the salary cap. So I'd be hugely in favor of something like that introduced, which is a far fairer way to apportion spend and give every team an opportunity than FFP will ever be.
Yeah, I think definitely FFP was one of those things that looked great on paper. It looked like it was going to reel in the PSGs and the Man Cities of this world who looked like they had unlimited pots of money, but ultimately now it's just, you know, like you said, Martin, you hit the nail on the head. It's not worth the paper it's written on. It really isn't, you know, and these rules are all great and good to have them there, but if they're not, if the punishments aren't dished out fairly, as you say, across the board, then just scrap them completely, really, because they're absolutely no good to anybody. Yeah. But like that, look, it's a topic we could talk about for weeks, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it.
Italy's a really good example, Jonathan. They did the same 10 years ago. Like I can remember as a teenager, used to watch the Italian football on the Sunday. Used to be on Channel 4. Yeah. And you'd watch that, and it was one of the best leagues. They had all the players, and they introduced a whole load of financial deals and different bits and pieces. Italian leagues are ruined now. No, you know, they've got a handful. It started to creep back up. Like when I was over in Italy there, I went to the Roma-Brighton game, managed to blag tickets. We went to the game. Atmosphere was brilliant. Probably one of the best games I've been to in a long time now. Happened to help that Roma won as well, so it was a really good night. But it's gradually coming back. But exactly, yeah, there's a point. You know, some of these teams are salary capped, but it's starting to create a competitive league again.
Yeah.
I just think it's a real way to be able to do it, but control the funds, but enable teams to spend and just create that entertainment value as well.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I hope the Premier League eventually finds a winning formula for this, because I don't think we can afford to fall back into the shadow of La Liga as we were about 10 years ago or so, and losing all our best players to La Liga. And we'll move on, and I'll come to Julio, because Julio, I know you were excited about talking about this backstage. This is the first in our series of what-if moments in the Premier League. And where else to start but that Steven Gerrard slip in 2014 at Anfield that ultimately cost Liverpool that Premier League title. Julio, what are your thoughts? What do you think would have happened if Steven Gerrard hadn't have slipped and Liverpool had have potentially won the league that season?
I wouldn't really say excited, because there's still more of a possibility that they could have won it than if they didn't, actually. But let's look at the context of it all, you know. If Slippy G doesn't slip, then I think they draw that game 0-0, because the whole reason Chelsea got that second goal, for instance, was because Liverpool were chasing the game and they committed so many men forward that you literally had Torres and Willian have a free run at goal. So I think because it was a second string defense that Chelsea were playing, because they were in between semi-finals against Atletico Madrid. So Mourinho tried to masterclass it as best as he could. So he probably would have got a draw. And notwithstanding that, Chelsea was still in the title race to an extent. And after that game, Liverpool were top with 2 games to go on 80 points. Chelsea was second with 78 points. City had a game in hand on 77 points. And this was after the 2-0 win of Chelsea. But if it was a draw, it would have been what, 81 points and 76, something like that. Just Chelsea might have been further behind in the title race, so it wouldn't have been that close. Then you go to Istanbul as that happened. Istanbul happened because Liverpool went 3-0 up and spent the majority of the game trying to catch up to City's goal difference, because City had a far superior goal difference of like +8 or something ridiculous like that. Because this City team under Pellegrini was scoring goals for fun. So maybe the one worry I have is Istanbul doesn't happen. Istanbul doesn't happen because Liverpool aren't up front the entire game. And Liverpool had a mediocre defense. We all know, like some of the dross they had in that team that shouldn't have been that close to a league title, let alone it was just so bad. It was so dross. It was so mediocre. So there's the worry that maybe Liverpool would have seen out the win against Palace, gone into the final day and won. And there is the worry that, in those 2 games alone, how many points did they drop? What was it? 5 points they dropped?
5 points, yeah.
Yeah, they would have possibly won the league. They only scored 1 goal less than Man City that season.
Well, that's what I mean. If you look at the ripple effect of that, just say for example they do hold on to those 5 points. Brendan Rodgers wins the Premier League with Liverpool. Okay, Luis Suarez probably
with Joe
still
Allen
leads the
in
club.
midfield.
Joe Allen in midfield, as we discussed, yeah. But
Oh my God.
does Brendan Rodgers then, even though he had a poor 14-15 season, does he have enough credit in the bank then where he doesn't get sacked at the start of that 15-16 season? Klopp doesn't come in then. Liverpool miss out on him. And this last 9 years for Liverpool Football Club was just a fantasy. It doesn't happen.
It's very
absolutely
difficult.
Because if you look back at that season, the only thing that Liverpool wanted from Rodgers was to get them back to the Champions League.
Yeah,
because they were playing pretty ropey football with no kind of real clear aim. The only aim, which I think, to be fair, when Liverpool kind of won those 11 or so games on the bounce, Pellegrini, I think, was on the telly and went, it's really hard for a team to win 14 in a row, and Liverpool went on to kind of win 11.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, they're in a title chase, which I think, I remember watching it back then and thinking, geez, they've kind of come out of nowhere. And I'd say there was probably people within the club and Rodgers who were looking at that going, Jesus Christ, lads, what's going on here? Because at the end of the day, I think when Rodgers came in, the aim that he had was just to get Liverpool back into Europe and back into the Champions League. So
yeah,
I think for them to be at that point, now, having said that, they still had to play Newcastle in one of those last 2 games. And we were happily as inconsistent as we ever are in a season. So who knows? Maybe Newcastle would have beaten them and City would have won it anyway. Who's to know? So there's a lot of ifs and buts. But I think if they had, then I would have said that Rodgers would have had enough credit in the bank to at least have another season. And then Klopp doesn't come, and who do they end up with then? Where does that go?
Yeah, it's crazy to think back on. Nathan, behind the scenes, you said that Steven Gerrard slip is in your top 5 sporting moments of all time. What would your thoughts have been if he hadn't slipped there and they had have eventually won that league title then, and not, what was it, 4 years ago?
What, you mean the league title they won with the asterisks next to it?
Yeah, where no fans witness it. No one there to witness
it. The COVID league. It doesn't count, that one, does it?
Yeah,
absolutely
the COVID
not.
league they won. Congratulations to Liverpool. Congratulations. Yeah. I said before, it's in my top 5 moments because it was just such a beautiful moment where Liverpool fans were so desperate to see Steven Gerrard win that league medal, and for us United fans and most other fans, we can still say that there are players that United have had over the years that definitely didn't deserve a league title medal, but they've got it, and that's what matters. That's one more than what Steven Gerrard has, and that's what's important for me in that respect. I've never been a fan of Steven Gerrard. He's this you know, he has an ability, but just didn't really do it for me. He's not really a beautiful player that I see and think, yeah, he's what England needed and what everyone wanted. It didn't really hit me in that respect. So seeing him slip and cause his beloved Liverpool a league title, in my respect, it's, and like you say, the ripple effect. Like you say, if they'd won it, Brendan Rodgers probably would have stayed, and then Jurgen Klopp may have ended up coming to us or something like that. You know, it's that beautiful idea
yeah.
of them winning it, and then them missing out on all those other successes that they've claimed to have had these past 9 years. It's an interesting thought, but yeah, it was a great moment, and I do see it a lot on my Twitter feed, and I still watch it, and it's just still great to see.
I think the other thing as well is Rodgers changed the entire kind of layout of Liverpool as well, because he switched to a 4-4-2, but like at the time he deployed, he was one of the first to what they called they deployed the diamond, because he wanted to get the best out of. He had Suarez at the tip, he had Coutinho, he had I think he had Sterling and Sturridge, and that was kind of that front four. So when that happened, you know, and they were scoring, like that season, Suarez was scoring goals for fun. I think it was the season that he volleyed against Norwich from about the halfway line, with two kind of blasters in the one game at Carrow Road or Anfield, whatever it was. But like, it's so much attacking power, and that slip, and it was just like, even as a Newcastle fan, I remember watching it, sat horrified on the couch going, no way. And it was just like a little bit of poetic justice. You're kind of like, well, you probably fucking deserve that. But yeah, they had so much firepower, but like that was it. Like they never recovered. Never. I think those players never recovered after that. They just didn't know what to do. But yeah, it was good TV, I have to say.
Absolutely, and it's still good TV to this day, as Nathan points out. I look forward to the anniversary every year, and it pops up in my Twitter feed that it's however many years since Steven Gerrard slipped at Anfield. And I think it was even more poetic because the week before they had played Norwich, as you said, Martin, and his famous line in the little huddle was, "We do not let this fucking slip now."
Yeah.
And then look, whatever happened then, and it's beautiful memory for I think all football fans. Gentlemen, that hour is absolutely flown by. Thanks so much for joining me. Julio, thanks for joining me, even though you haven't been feeling so well tonight. You're hiding there behind your camera, but look, thanks for joining us anyway. Nathan, thanks so much for hopping on for your first show. I'm sure we'll get you on for plenty of shows again in the future. And Martin, always a pleasure to have you on. Always good to have that Newcastle opinion. And look, I'm sure we'll have you on again very, very soon. Thanks for everyone in the comments. Thanks for watching the show, guys. We'll have I think we'll have another show. I just wanted the weekend, obviously no Premier League, so no previews this weekend, but I think we're back again next week with Callum's show. It should be next Tuesday, so keep an eye on the socials and everything like that. If you haven't already, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel, and as always, thanks so much for watching. Cheers, guys.